Welcome to Buffalo Gameday Recap. I'm Thad Brown along with AJ Feldman. After the Bills slipped by the Chiefs 20-17, it's a win. They got some breaks, but I'll tell you what, AJ, look, here's the bottom line. Stuff happened to the Bills this week, and we're going to get into this stuff a little bit, but it was a lot of stuff. It wasn't a run-of-the-mill week of stuff. And they won a game. They won it on the road. They won it against the defending Super Bowl champions. They won it in a spot where a loss probably all but dooms them to not make the playoffs. And we'll get into some of the details as to how things kind of bounce Buffalo's way. But AJ, getting this win after the week they had is no small accomplishment.
No, certainly not an incident-free bye week, to say the least. Obviously, Von Miller goes down to Dallas, allegedly assaults his pregnant girlfriend, gets arrested, released on bond. He played that, happened during their bye week. And then on Wednesday, they answer all the questions about whether or not he's going to play. Brandon Beane talks, Sean McDermott talks, the players are asked about it. I'm sure they weren't thrilled to be talking about that situation. Obviously, they don't want anything to be accused of that or to have happened to one of their players. And then on Thursday, a 3-part series gets released about how Sean McDermott, A, can't coach his team, B, can't relate to his players, C, chokes under pressure, is wasting Josh Allen's career. And they, to an extent, have to deal with that on Thursday and Friday. And, all this easy, we're going to go on vacation, get some rest, go on the bye, enjoy our rest advantage against the Chiefs, gets kind of thrown out the window. And somehow, some way, they get it done. They get a big win. They go on the road to a hostile environment, get a much-needed win. We've said, it's been said many a times, they need to go 4-1 down the stretch. They got one of them, 4 more to go.
All right, let's talk about the end of this game. And let's start with the Kadarius Toney penalty. Because, first of all, number one, I'm angry about it because it took one of the great all-time plays off the board. That Travis Kelce pitched back to Toney for a touchdown. Should have been. Now, look, Josh Allen could have turned around and won the game. There's still a minute and change left. That'd have been fine. I just wanted that play to count because that was one of the great improvisations, especially in a clutch spot in a big game, to give a team a lead. And now the penalty was 100% correct. There's no excuse for it. Kadarius Toney screwed up. I know people can't say they want to hear that. I don't care. It was the right call. End of story. But it was such a good play. And as it's happening, and first of all, rest in peace for Frank Wycheck and condolences to the Wycheck family because the former Titans tight end, if people haven't heard, passed away over the weekend. But he was the guy who was in the middle of the Music City Miracle. And on the same day that news is released, for the Bills to theoretically be in the middle of another lateral, unlikely touchdown that gets them beat would have been one of the more bananas connections in terms of an ending for a game in NFL history. But the penalty took that off the board. And although that was, to me, the equivalent of you're up by 1 with a 10th of a second to go in a basketball game and the other team misses 3 straight free throws. Like, you didn't do anything to earn that. That was given to you, okay? But it's only second down after the penalty. And following that, Von Miller gets a little pressure along with, the Bills defensive line. They force it incomplete. Ed Oliver gets a tip, forces it incomplete. Then it's 4th and 15, and the Bills do their job and didn't give that up. They made those plays there. So the defense gets credit for that. And they get credit for getting a stop, even if really the biggest part of that is something they had nothing to do with and is one of the more fortunate ways to win a game. So I think both those things can be true. I'm not going to look at the Bills defense and say, well, they shut down Pat Mahomes, that they can count on them now. But they, they made enough plays to win that game.
No, such an incredible play. When it was happening, you're just watching it like, is this actually happening? This is something
right.
that you try backyard football, you try in Madden, like a wild lateral across the play. Granted, Travis Kelce, of all of the people in the NFL, he's like the guy who likes doing the laterals. Well, actually, him and Josh Allen, probably the 2 players in the league who you could kind of imagine this happening were on the field today. And another thing about that play, Cam Lewis was so close to deflecting that lateral. You look at your angle, you look at the CBS angle, he came pretty gosh darn close to just batting that out of the play. And suddenly, Cam Lewis, the guy who last year on, the Justin Jefferson, the crazy play, screwed that up. He would have gone, the other side, making a dramatic play on a crazy play. So it is one of those plays where you almost wish it would have counted because it was just so cool. But obviously for the Bills, they're happy. And yeah, it took one do-over. Something finally bounced their way. But, we've talked about it all season long on the show. It's been a consistent theme with this team. They finally get it done. They finally get off the field.
And then after the game, and the video I have of Pat Mahomes is now viral, finger quotes.
We don't need to put the air quotes. It's viral. It's just straight up viral.
We'll give it the straight up viral treatment. Either way, so if you haven't seen it, you can go to Thad Brown 7 on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, pretty much anything that has Thad Brown 7 on it, you will find it right now. To sum up, Patrick Mahomes. Now everybody saw on the broadcast him going berserk on the official, and as much as I love Pat Mahomes, and he's a classy guy, and this one incident will not change that. Patrick Mahomes is one of the best guys there is in the NFL, and a lot of respect for that. That said, he was out of his gourd, when it comes to the reaction to the official during the broadcast. And then after the game, in the traditional quarterback greeting that every pair of quarterbacks in the NFL does after every game, he went up to Josh Allen and said, "Terrible bleeping call." And poor Josh Allen, I don't think he knew what to do. I think Pat Mahomes, and don't get me wrong, some people I think have looked at it and thought that is Mahomes like telling Josh Allen, excuse me, is Mahomes telling Josh Allen that the only reason he won is because of a bad call? And no, I don't think that's what it is. I think Mahomes, like the game has ended, the guys have turned themselves off from being football players, and now Mahomes just seen a buddy, and it's like, hey, do you see what happened to me? Oh my God, that was the worst thing ever. And Josh Allen, like I said, doesn't know what to do, because it is his friend. He wants to console him, but he's also really happy he won, and the call benefited him. So in 24 years of covering the NFL, I have never seen a player complain to a player on the opposing team about a call that cost him a win and obviously gave the other team or helped give the other team a win. It was one of the more weird situations. And Mahomes didn't stop. After he got done with Allen, he congratulated a couple other Bills players, walked to his bench, and just the whole time, bleeping terrible call, bleeping terrible call, bleeping terrible call. I've never seen that before. One of the reasons probably why it's viral. But I can't blame him, and that was the right call. I'm sure if you're him, you're frustrated because, 2 inches is what cost you the game. It had nothing to do with the play. But it was the right call, like we said. The Chiefs screwed themselves up here and cost themselves a win.
I will say, I think you're giving Mahomes a little bit of credit for being, oh man, weird call, like to his buddy. He was still in, wired, going kind of berserk mode. He wasn't.
He definitely was.
Yeah.
Like I'm always saying, the only reason I say that is not because he wasn't still like left of his conscious and just somewhere out of his body, but like the reason he did it is not to put Josh Allen down. It was
no. Yeah.
It's like, if me and you were playing golf and like you're about to break, 70 or something, and somebody yells in your backswing, you miss a putt, and like you're hot about it, you're still gonna go. The first person you see, you're gonna be like, "Oh, did you see what happened on that?" And it's just the fact that it was Josh Allen is almost a coincidence.
No, it was certainly quite the overreaction by Andy Reid. He called it, I believe, embarrassing for the league to make that call, in that type of situation. Obviously everybody's seen Mahomes. They went so far that I can't, fire off this take that if it was for the Bills, they would love the fact that their coach and their quarterback are railing against the refs. But unfortunately it went so far that I can't even say that in good conscience. But, certainly, a type of call that, it is the right call. It should be called there. But, if you look at it from the other side, it is the type of play that literally doesn't, it doesn't affect the play at all.
It has nothing to do with anything. Yeah.
If there's any 100% cut and clear call you can ignore, it would be something like this. So unfortunately, it was 100%. It was cut and clear, and you call a penalty.
The one thing I will say is that Andy Reid said something about normally I get a warning, and maybe if that is the custom for an official to say, hey, coach, your guy lined up 3 inches offside, next time we're to call it. I could see that being the case, but I mean, I don't know why you'd give a warning in that spot because there's like 4 plays in the future anyway. It's not like there's a whole rest of the game to fix that for. So again, the Chiefs were wrong. The call was right. The Bills get the win. Now, the one thing I will say about this, AJ, is I don't know if I can be. No, I'm not going to say that. That's the wrong thing to say. I'm not super impressed by this win in the way that you look at the big things that happened in this game. There were 2 fumbles. The Bills recovered both of them. There was a deflected pass, AJ Epinesa, the ball dropped into his arms. All three of those things are luck-based. The recovery of fumbles is not a skill thing. It's a luck thing. Now, to be fair, the Bills were on the other end of that for a lot of the season, and now that luck, I think, is turning around for them. But within this game, the two pieces of luck on fumble went their way. The interception deflection went their way. The call at the end of the game, that was the right call, not lucky, but they had nothing to do with that went their way. All of that combined, the Bills were still fighting off Pat Mahomes with a 3-point lead at the end of the game. I don't know if I can sit here and say that team is a team I feel confident in winning 3 of the last 4 when you have Dallas and Miami among those games. And I mean, look, the Bills can make the playoffs, and that would be an accomplishment considering where they were last week during the bye. But getting bounced in the first round of the playoffs is not an accomplishment based on what this team's expectations were in the preseason. And the team I saw win tonight, I have very little confidence that they will do any damage in the playoffs.
It literally was same old Bills until the very end. You know, they get up big, they get a 14-0 lead. Allen throws a really dumb interception, turns into points. They can't score at the end of the half. They have to settle for a field goal. And suddenly, you know, the offense is stuttering. They can't figure out anything to do. The Chiefs, you know, score another touchdown. They get back into it. They tie it up. Literally, you know, it is same old deja vu. Every Bills fan knew what was coming until the very end. So there's no, you know, turning the page. Oh, the Bills figured this out. The Bills did this differently. The Bills know how to win now. It was, you know, it was the same old thing, but they got a couple breaks. They got a penalty to go their way. And yes, of course, once it got to 2nd and 15, 3rd and 15, 4th and 15, they did eventually make those stops. But it's not like the Chiefs have been world beaters. They've lost 4 of their last 6 games. They lost the Broncos. You know, they just went into Green Bay and they got beat by a middling to bad Packers team. So this isn't the Chiefs, you know, of old, as we talked about all season long. Their wide receivers are trash, but there was a lot to be concerned about with this, you know, this win offensively in the second half, the way their receivers performed. There's a lot to get into about why, you know, like you said, all right, let's not just pencil them in for 4 more wins and let's see if we can catch the Dolphins.
And, you know, on that point of the offense, and the one thing I will say about the Chiefs, by the way, is I totally agree. This is not your older brother's Chiefs from 2-3 years ago, or even last year winning the Super Bowl, but it's still a good win. I mean, they're still a good team. You know, they're a division leader. You know, they've got a good defense, and you saw why. I mean, you know, we're going to talk about Bill's offensive issues, but some of it was because the Chiefs defense is just frankly good. But on the offense, game 3 under Joe Brady, I think it was the first time you saw a game where, at least walking away from watching it live, I have a lot of issues with the way he called that game. The reliance on the wide receiver screens, the bubble screen stuff, I thought was terrible. Now, I'll give them credit. They did a nice adjustment off of it late in the game before the go-ahead field goal. They tried to fake that play and then hit Dalton Kincaid down the field. Chiefs were ready for it. The lack of the usage of James Cook in the second half, I think there might be good reasons for that. Obviously, the Chiefs did a great job against the run, no matter who was carrying it after halftime. But you'd like to see Cook more involved in the passing game. Mm-hmm. And then just confirm to me, did Gabe Davis play in the games? I'm not sure right now.
He did. Yeah, he had a Gabe Davis special. 0 catches, 0 yards.
Yes.
We'll see how he blocked, whether or not a game ball or not.
Did he have? He had 1 target, I remember, right? Maybe 2.
2 targets. Yeah.
2 targets. Okay. The second one was probably like a throwaway. So, to your point about this being the same old Bills game we've seen, you know, this is Gabe Davis doing Gabe Davis things, and Josh Allen with a bad interception. This was, if the Bills had lost, I think this would be a big part of the talking point of, was those first 2 games a mirage? Was it just 2 good games? Or, you know, is this the bad game against a good defense? And obviously we'll have to wait 3 or 4 more games to find that out. But this was concerning. You know, a lot of the confidence that the offense, the rhythm they talked about, they had none. You know, and I'll get into what the sideline was like in a little bit, but there was no energy, no rhythm for most of the second half. And you know, all the things that Joe Brady had seemed to do that was fixing issues on offense were gone. We talked about, you know, the offense being good except for mistakes. Well, in this game, you saw the bad Josh Allen interception. You saw the multiple holding penalties. You know, there were mistakes in this game that shut down drives, same as when Ken Dorsey was calling the offense. So the Bills got away with it in this game. And a lot of it, you know, was because they have 17. He was the entire offense in the, you know, last 25 minutes of the game. The Latavius Murray play was all him. You know, Deontay Hardy was at least in structure, but it was a ridiculous accurate throw by Josh Allen. If they don't have 17, that offense does nothing. And I know you can say that no matter who the coordinator is, but the concern is that the improvements we saw from games 1 and 2 after the 14 points were scored were gone in this game.
And, a lot of times we've talked about the offense being Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs had a really bad game, and it's, not exactly been a theme, but we've had these moments before. 4 catches, 24 yards, a long of 9. He was targeted 11 times, only made 4 catches. He had the drop just outside of 2 minutes, which would have kept the clock rolling, would have gotten it past the 2-minute warning. In the second half, he had the contested drop on 3rd down, which would have extended the 6. And then I believe there was another play where you could argue he dropped the ball again. So a really rough game by Steph Diggs. The receiver production, we talked about Gabe and Steph, obviously those are your big 1-2. Deontay Hardy, the 1 catch for 25 yards. Khalil Shakir, 1 catch for 12 yards. That's a really tough, way to win a football game when your wide receivers are, giving the Chiefs a run for their money on how unproductive they can be.
The one thing that I've noticed about the Joe Brady offense, and this is no matter what game we're talking about, this one or the last 2 where the Bills scored 30, and not so much the Jets game because that was a train wreck against a terrible team. But there's a large percentage of the offense that feels like it's Josh Allen making stuff up, which was one of the criticisms we had of the Ken Dorsey offense late last year, where there is so much that the Bills have to do out of structure, where it's Josh Allen leaving the pocket and throwing on the run, or Josh Allen scrambling. Less of that today. I'm not confident in an offense when the quarterback, no matter how good he is, and Josh Allen is ridiculously good at doing these things, but if you can't operate offense in structure more than 80, 70% of the time, and you're just hoping your quarterback can make things up, that's not going to work long-term, and it's certainly not going to work in the playoffs. And, without actually counting, it feels like the Bills are about 50-50, where Josh Allen can drop back and make a throw, and where Josh Allen drops back and he's like, well, just going to hope I can make this happen on the run.
Yeah, especially in a game, where the running game isn't going, where that can kind of be your change up to, the Josh Allen craziness. In a game where, receivers are dropping passes, it's tough to live and die with Josh Allen, put so much on him, especially when, this is a season where for all the, the great touchdowns, the great total touchdowns, he has thrown a lot of interceptions. We had another one today. So you give him so many chances to do those things. Yeah, he's going to make a lot of great plays, but you give him so many opportunities. Eventually he's going to throw the ball, across his body and get an interception.
See, give is the wrong word there. They're forcing him into those opportunities. They're forcing him to do these things on his own. And that's where you will get into some trouble. Now, I think you give him 3 plays like that, 2 of them are going to be good. But if again, the goal, I think we all have for where the Bills offense should be is to allow Josh Allen to operate more within structure, because the structure is good enough that he doesn't have to go and do the crazy stuff. Because how many times do you see Josh Allen drop back, sit in the pocket, and dissect the defense and put the ball in the wrong spot? The Patriots interception was maybe that, but most of his interceptions are what we saw today. He's rolling out, trying to make a throw, trying to play hero ball, and having him forced into doing that too much is where I think the Bills get in trouble. Now, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's kind of, the problems that it was at the end of the Dorsey tenure is that when you're not getting those bigger plays, you're having to methodically, dink and dunk and run down your field. 1 holding penalty, 1 sack. Now you're so far behind the 8 ball. And we saw that happen in the second half a couple of times with a few of their drives. Field goals turn to punts, touchdowns turn to field goals.
The other thing I want to talk about with being on the sideline of this game, I think there was a feeling among Bills fans late in the week with the way that week went, that the article that was written by Tyler Dunn about Sean McDermott would rally the Bills and get them to play for Sean McDermott. And there might have been some of that going on. But during the game, I was surprised at how little emotion and energy there was on the sideline. Even when it was 14-0. It seemed like the Bills were treating this like a business trip and a business trip alone. And I really thought that, if they were going to play for their coach, I thought there'd be more energy. I mean, even forget about playing for their coach. They were kind of playing for their season in this game. And you didn't see that. Now, look, it's supposed to be a business trip. There's no need to go way high and way low all the time. That's not productive either. But I was noticeably surprised by how little energy there was on the Bills sideline, whether it was 14-0 or 17-17. And after the game, when we talked to players about, did you, paraphrasing questions, did you win this one for Sean McDermott? And the general way I'd sum up the reaction was there wasn't a universal, yes, we went into this game and really wanted to show everybody that we love Sean McDermott. The answers were, we like the guy. He's a really good man. He's a really good coach. We're happy that the end of this week for him was a win. We're happy we got this win for him. But the reason we're happy we won the game is the same reason we're happy we won all the games for us, because we want to have a season. We want to go to the playoffs. We want to be successful. And, I'm summing it up in a way that's kind of Spartan and maybe cold. And that's not how the guys answered. They care about McDermott. They like him. They're glad they won for him. But that's not one reason what they were going after this game. They wanted this game for the reason they won all the other games.
Yeah, it's certainly tough to gauge, their emotions, their reactions. You had a better view of it on the sidelines than me. On the other hand, all of these distractions and, the articles, Von Miller, that can just maybe just weigh on them a lot. Maybe it was just an exhausting week for them to have to deal with, reading about their teammate, what happened there, reading about their head coach, having to, see their head coach be on SNL, get parodied for, of course, the 9/11 speech, as it's, being called these days. So it's tough. From what I gathered on, the podium, I'm listening, to Mitch Morse and Josh Allen. It certainly did definitely seem like they wanted to win this one for Sean, whether or not it was a rah, fire each up in the locker room, like, let's do it for Sean. I don't know if it was that far, but certainly that they were appreciative to get this one for them. And it's just been a long season for them, and it's tough to gauge, get so much emotion when you are struggling in the second half, when one of your emotional leaders, Stephon Diggs, is having a really bad game. It's tough to get up in people's faces when you're one of the ones letting them down. It looks a little hypocritical. Josh Allen, interception, the offense can't get going. The defensive leaders, I don't know who exactly would be stepping up emotionally for them, at Oliver perhaps, but there weren't prime reasons to get so fired up in the second half, when also they probably have in the back of their heads thinking the same thing all the Bills fans are, like, all right, here we go again. Here's another loss. Here's this, here's that, which, could also weigh on them as well.
That's a concern for me. And I'll tell you what, walking by the sideline, third, fourth quarter, when the game seemed to be going the wrong way, I don't want to say that they were expecting that, but if they told me later that, yeah, we thought we were going to get beat, it wouldn't surprise me the way that they were acting on the sideline. Doesn't mean that that's what they were thinking, but that thought occurred to me too. Like, are they expecting this game to go like all the other ones did? And that's where you can land wherever you want on the Tyler Dunne article. We can get into that right now. The real question about it is, how much of it is accurate? Does Sean McDermott have an issue staying composed in big spots? Is he not the guy to lead the Bills to wins in these important games? Now, today he was. The buttons he pushed, whatever he did as the head coach, same way as you get the blame for that stuff, he gets the credit for it. They won the game today. But there was enough that I saw on the sideline to where I wondered, were these guys thinking, not specifically this, but essentially this, was that article correct? Because they didn't look like a team ready to win a game late and close.
Yeah, and that's the thing really with the article, which, however you want to, put the blame on the reason this, but, the article has become, Sean McDermott talked about 9/11 to fire up his team, which was really one of the, examples used in this bigger picture of he can't relate to his team. He has, problem with his, interpersonal relationships, getting along with coaches and things of that nature. And B, just the constant examples of, the Bills falling short in these situations. And is this, a player problem, or is this a Sean McDermott problem? And we've talked about this before. McDermott's made some mistakes, down the stretch. We can talk about 13 seconds till, the cows come home, but there have been late game situations where the Bills, for whatever reason, have not risen up to, the level that they should, for the amount of talent that their quarterback has, for the amount of talent that their roster has. So, it's a valid, article to lay out whether or not Sean McDermott is the right person to, lead this team forward to the Super Bowl. We can get into, if you want to, the way it was laid out, the anonymous quotes, people who have, left the team, been fired by the team, things of that nature. But it's certainly a question worth having, whether or not, you agree with, the article, formatting, or I guess itself.
Journalistically, I think it's done okay, it's well enough within the lines to be acceptable. Does it bear a distinct stench of sour grapes? It absolutely does.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a thought in this business where the business being the NFL, that if you found 20 guys who were fired by a coach, they probably would all, any coach, doesn't matter. That's how it would sound if you talk to the people who had been cut, fired, let go. But I don't want to sit here and say I don't think Tyler Dunne is making stuff up.
No.
There was a comment by one of the reporters we talked to today nationally who said that article kind of sounded like a prosecutor, delivering his opening statement or his closing statement, where I think Sean McDermott should be fired because of this. And that's not super journalism. Journalism is, here's what people are saying and you can decide at home. So there are reasonable questions to have about it. But at the end of the day, like I said, the only thing that matters for the Bills and this football team is how much of it is true. And there was a point today where it looked true.
Yeah. And, when you have all of these stories kind of relayed, it's up to the storyteller to tell them in the most accurate way. There's two examples I kind of want to point out, is that he points out a comment that Isaiah McKenzie made on his podcast talking about, video clips being played together over and over and over again. And, McKenzie makes a joke like, oh, you guys are cult leaders. The way he linked to it so you could watch it for yourself, the way that he, writes the text of that story doesn't say, oh, McKenzie made a joke, oh, they're cult leaders, which is, anybody who knows Isaiah McKenzie, almost everything that he says is a joke. So that wasn't laid out there
in the good way, but I know what you mean. Yeah, right.
Exactly. Yeah. And the one story I think of when I hear this is the story about Mitch Morse, reportedly putting like a Jordan logo on his, workman boots. I think that sounds like a really funny joke. I don't know if, Mitch Morse played it, wanted to, make fun of Sean McDermott, or was playing along with Sean McDermott. I don't know, but that's the prime example where if you frame that story a different way, it's an entirely different story.
And there were multiple excerpts, anecdotes in there that I read it and said, well, the phrase this way, it looks bad, but I can take those exact words and put a different context next to them and phrase it, good. Again, bottom line is how much of this affects the team. And at least for this week, it didn't affect the team. We're just about done here. Before we go, I want to do a couple of players that I thought were good in this game. Number one, look, Von Miller has not been anywhere close to Von Miller, but he was in on the play at the end of the game. That's, again, a small step forward. I've been saying that if he started the season at like 20% of himself, he's moving in like 2% increments. That was another 2% jump today. I thought the secondary did a solid job. Granted, I think the Chiefs receivers are utter trash, and Frank, you and Carl could cover them. But that said, Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford, I thought had mostly solid games, and they needed to have a solid game from them. And James Cook, although he wasn't used at all, he hasn't had a consistent impact status as a two-way running back or a rushing receiving guy. But boy, as a receiver, he was dangerous today, and he was the only guy other than Deontay Hardy at the end of the game making big plays. And I think that's a pretty solid step forward for him, especially coming off a game against Philly where he flat out dropped what should have been a big play touchdown.
Yeah, and Micah Hyde leaves the game, and I believe it was the third quarter, maybe the fourth, with a stinger. Taylor Rapp has to come in more extendedly than he wants to. Cam Lewis, as we mentioned, kind of in on that long play. So two guys who they probably weren't expected to play in those roles. The defense wasn't perfect down the stretch, but still, you hold Pat Mahomes to 17 points. That deserves a little praise there.
Anything else in this game? I think we've talked it out enough here at this point. But it's obviously a big game for the Bills this season.
Yeah, big game, and now it's 4 games to go, and one of those games becomes a lot easier potentially with Justin Herbert potentially being out for that game. Easton Stick now quarterbacking the Chargers. It doesn't seem like Herbert might not play the rest of the season with them kind of being out of contention, and B, that game just being 2 weeks away. I certainly would not bet on Justin Herbert playing that game, which is 85% of the reason why you fear the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, I thought that game was a sneaky dangerous one, but now without Justin Herbert, it won't be anywhere near the same. All right, next week for the Bills, home against the Cowboys. Big one. Now look, they win this game, and now you're in great shape, and you might even start sneaking in some division title thoughts, depending on the Dolphins got to help you out a lot to make that happen. But if the Bills beat the Chiefs and the Cowboys, then we're probably talking about playoff damage. What can they do? But regardless, the win today means that Cowboys game is not a must win. They can probably win the other 3 games and make the playoffs, which makes this one a big, big step. Thanks as always for watching, listening to Buffalo Game Day Recap. You can find us every single week at rochesterfirst.com. Subscribe on YouTube, and of course, check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Next week, it'll be me and Carl Jones doing this show from Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park. For AJ Feldman, I'm Thad Brown. Thanks for watching and listening this week. We'll see you next week on Buffalo Game Day Recap.